The vast docking bay of Zerell Station shimmered under bright artificial lights. Ships of every shape and size hovered and docked with careful precision. Among the crowd of alien merchants, diplomats, and travelers, a single human stepped onto the platform. He was young, perhaps no more than 20, yet his posture and calm demeanor gave the impression of someone older, someone who had seen more than he should. His dark coat swayed slightly as he walked, and every step he took seemed deliberate, as though he measured each moment with care. He glanced around, noting the unusual beings moving around him. Some had long, elegant necks, others multiple arms, and some glowed faintly under the station lights. Most were focused on their tasks, exchanging goods or information. The human's eyes, sharp and attentive, observed everything. It was not fear that guided him. It was curiosity. Humans were not always welcomed easily in distant space hubs, but he had learned that calm observation could speak louder than words. Near the central atrium, a crowd had gathered. Their attention was drawn to a figure standing on a raised platform. Even from a distance, it was clear she was no ordinary person. Her aura commanded attention, and her movements were precise, almost regal. This was the 19-year-old princess of the Zerell Dominion. She wore a ceremonial robe that shimmered like liquid metal, and a crown of delicate crystal strands. Her violet eyes scanned the crowd with sharp focus. The human's guide whispered softly, "That is Princess Alira. She rarely meets outsiders personally. You must be careful." The human nodded but said nothing. He had been in tense meetings before and knew that silence could sometimes be more powerful than speech. As they approached the platform, the princess's gaze fell on him. Her lips curved slightly, a smirk that did not reach her eyes. "So you are the human," she said, her voice carrying across the atrium. Every head turned toward the newcomer. "I have heard much about your species. Brave, they say. Resourceful, I am told, and yet you are so small, so fragile. Do you think your kind truly belongs among the great races of the galaxy?" A hush fell over the onlookers. Alien whispers rippled like waves through the crowd. Some were amused, others looked concerned. The princess's words were sharp, almost cruel, testing not just the human but the decorum of the event. The human paused. He could feel the tension in the air, the weight of 100 eyes on him. He looked at her calmly, his expression unreadable. His mind considered 100 possible replies, clever retorts, polite arguments, even humorous comebacks. Yet he did not speak. He merely inclined his head slightly, acknowledging her words, and turned away. Murmurs broke out across the crowd. Some gasped, others frowned. How could a human remain so calm in the face of insult? Princess Alira's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of confusion. She had expected anger, embarrassment, or at least a defensive word. Instead, she had received nothing. The human walked toward the docking bay exit, leaving the crowd behind. Each step was measured, steady, and confident. The princess watched him go, a strange feeling stirring within her. She was used to commanding respect, yet this human had commanded attention without speaking, without demanding it. As he moved away, the human's guide caught up. "He is different," the guide whispered. "You must be cautious." She does not usually accept silence as an answer. The human nodded again. "I am aware. Silence can be stronger than words." Outside the station, the city sprawled like a living circuit of light and energy. Flying vehicles traced glowing trails as they moved between towers and landing pads. The human paused for a moment, taking in the alien landscape. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed overwhelming, chaotic even, but to him it was a puzzle waiting to be understood. Every structure, every light, every movement had a reason, a pattern, a logic that could be deciphered. He moved through the streets quietly, avoiding unnecessary attention. Alien merchants called out, offering exotic goods while others tried to impress him with demonstrations of technology. He observed all of it with keen eyes but did not stop. His mission here was simple yet delicate. Deliver an important message to the Zerell Dominion's council, ensure the safety of his own delegation, and gather intelligence on the political climate. Each task required focus, precision, and calm judgment, qualities humans were surprisingly good at when trained. Meanwhile, back at the station's atrium, Princess Alira could not shake the image of the human leaving. Her advisors approached, speaking quickly. "Your Highness," one said, "he is but a human. He shows no fear, no respect." "It is unusual. Most would react poorly to your words." Alira's violet eyes narrowed. "I do not seek respect. I am testing him. If he fails, it will confirm my beliefs about humans. But if he does not react, then perhaps he is more than I thought. The advisors exchanged glances. Few dared to challenge her judgment, yet all recognized the rare quality she hinted at. That evening, the human settled into a modest guest quarters. He unpacked a few tools, carefully checking each one. Though young, he had experience in engineering, diplomacy, and problem-solving. His mind was always active, analyzing possibilities, anticipating problems, and seeking solutions. He thought about the princess and her words, but not with anger or frustration. Instead, he considered them data points, observations about a culture he had just begun to understand. Late into the night, he worked quietly, reviewing reports, schematics, and maps of the station and surrounding areas. He considered the flow of traffic, the placement of guards, the schedules of the council, and even the timing of the princess's public appearances. Humans often notice details others missed, patterns that could later become critical. His ability to remain calm, observe deeply, and act strategically set him apart from many more experienced delegates he had met in the past. The next morning, the council chamber buzzed with activity. Alien officials gathered to discuss trade agreements, security protocols, and political alliances. The princess arrived, her robe shimmering, her crown reflecting the soft light of the chamber. Her eyes scanned the room, and then, inevitably, they found the human again. This time she approached him directly. The air seemed to shift. Diplomats and guards alike took a step back, giving space to the encounter. "You left so abruptly yesterday," she said, without a word, without argument. Most would have reacted foolishly. "Why did you leave?" The human looked at her calmly, choosing his words with care. There was no need to respond, he said simply. "Your words were noted. Action will speak louder than any reply." Alira's eyes widened slightly. No one had spoken to her this way before. Her pride pricked, but she could not deny the truth in his statement. He carried himself with quiet confidence, with a strength that did not need to prove itself through insults or boasts. The princess's curiosity was piqued. Here was a human, small and fragile in appearance, yet composed, intelligent, and unflinching. She had expected defensiveness or fear. Instead, she saw calm, patience, and focus. "You are unusual," she said. "Most humans I have met would have argued, shouted, or left in disgrace, yet you stand silently. Why?" The human inclined his head slightly. "Because I understand that words can fail. Actions, however, leave no room for doubt." Alira stared at him, and for the first time she felt a flicker of respect. She did not show it, not yet. Her pride would not allow it. But inside, a seed of curiosity took root. Who was this human? And why did he command attention without ever raising his voice? As the council meeting began, the princess sat near him, observing. He worked quietly, reviewing notes, contributing when necessary, and solving minor problems others struggled with. His competence was subtle but unmistakable. By the end of the session, murmurs among council members suggested that humans might be more capable than many had assumed. After the meeting, Alira walked beside the human through the palace gardens, where exotic plants glowed softly under artificial sunlight. She studied him, trying to read his thoughts. Yet his expression remained calm, unreadable. It was frustrating and fascinating all at once. "You may leave," she said finally, testing him once more. "You have earned nothing here, yet you remain." "Why do you stay?" The human looked at her evenly. "Because the task is not complete. Leaving without finishing would be careless. Humans value completion, not appearances." Alira did not respond immediately. She wanted to, yet she could not find words that matched his calm authority. She realized something. This human was different. He did not need to boast, argue, or fight for respect. He carried it naturally, through competence, intelligence, and self-control. That evening, as the human returned to his quarters, Princess Alira watched him from a distance. He moved with purpose, his mind sharp, his presence quiet but undeniable. She had intended to insult him, to test his pride. Instead, she had witnessed something far more interesting. A being who did not bend to arrogance, who relied on thought and action rather than words to make an impression. For the first time in her life, the princess felt uncertain. She had always known her power, her influence, and her place in the galaxy. Yet here was a human who, without raising his voice or demanding attention, had made her question everything she thought she knew about other species. and perhaps about humans in... The morning sun of Zerell Station brought no relief from the alien bustle. Market stalls hummed with life. Traders shouted their offers, and hovering vehicles left glowing trails above the city streets. Yet amidst all this, one figure moved quietly, observing every detail with a calm focus that drew no attention. The human had risen early, as always, reviewing reports and maps in preparation for his next task. He knew Princess Alira's eyes still lingered on him. Her sharp insult and the silent reaction he had given the previous day had become the talk of the station. He did not seek attention, yet it followed him, subtle and persistent. Alien whispers of admiration, disbelief, and curiosity seemed to fill the corridors wherever he walked. Within the royal palace, Princess Alira paced her chamber. Her violet eyes shone with unspoken thoughts. She had intended to embarrass the human with her words, to assert her superiority, and yet he had walked away calmly. She could not recall anyone in her life who had acted so calmly under direct challenge. "Advisors," she said at last, turning sharply to her staff. "Prepare a full report on the human's movements. I want to know everything he has done since he arrived." The advisors exchanged glances. Few had ever seen the princess so unsettled. Most feared her judgment, but even they sensed something different in her tone. "Yes, Your Highness," one of them replied. "We will gather information immediately." Alira moved to the balcony overlooking the bustling streets of Zerell Station. Her eyes searched for the human's figure among the crowd. She had to see him in action. She had to understand how a human could command attention without a single raised voice. Meanwhile, the human had entered the heart of the trading district. Alien merchants shouted offers, displaying glowing gadgets, rare materials, and exotic food items. Some attempted to distract him, some attempted to impress him, yet he remained focused. He walked calmly, examining schematics and maps he had memorized the night before. Every turn, every route, every access point had been calculated for efficiency. A small commotion near a hover platform caught his attention. A cargo container, unstable and overloaded, teetered dangerously at the edge of the platform. Alien workers shouted, gesturing wildly, but fear paralyzed them. Without hesitation, the human stepped forward. He assessed the weight, the angle, and the flow of the moving platform. With quick precision, he adjusted a series of clamps and levers, stabilizing the container and preventing a potential collapse. The workers stared at him astonished. They had not expected a human to act with such decisiveness and technical skill. One worker called out, "How did you—" The human simply nodded, his eyes scanning the next possible hazard, and moved on. No words were wasted. No pride was displayed. Yet in that single act, the human had earned respect not by demanding it, but by solving a problem that others feared to touch. Back in the palace, Princess Alira's advisors had compiled their report. "Your Highness," one said, "the human has already handled 3 separate incidents today, from mechanical malfunctions to disputes among traders. All have been resolved efficiently and without complaint. It is remarkable." Alira's lips pressed into a thin line. "I expected arrogance, mistakes, or confusion," she said softly. "Instead, he shows calm, patience, and skill. I cannot dismiss him as I had intended." She realized her curiosity had grown into a quiet obsession. The human's actions contradicted everything she had assumed about his species. She had insulted him to assert her superiority, yet he had turned her test into a quiet demonstration of human capability. By mid-afternoon, the human had reached the council chambers once again. He moved with purpose, carrying a small data pad filled with notes on station logistics, trade agreements, and security observations. Every step he took seemed deliberate, confident yet without arrogance. Princess Alira watched him from across the chamber. She noted how he interacted with alien officials. He did not dominate conversations, nor did he shrink in their presence. He asked precise questions, listened carefully, and offered solutions that often surprised the more experienced delegates. One situation demanded immediate attention. A dispute had broken out between 2 alien factions over a shipment of rare minerals. Voices rose, accusations flew, and tempers flared. Most diplomats were hesitant to intervene, fearing political backlash. The human stepped forward. He observed the situation quietly, noting the positions of each speaker, the sequence of events, and the evidence on the table. Then calmly and clearly, he outlined a compromise that satisfied both parties. He proposed a temporary sharing arrangement with detailed monitoring to ensure fairness. The room fell silent. Aliens who had been ready to argue fiercely found themselves nodding in agreement. The factions accepted his plan, relieved and impressed. No one had expected a human to demonstrate such clear reasoning and moral fairness. Princess Alira's eyes narrowed. She had been trained to spot weakness, yet this human had none in the situations she had observed. She felt a mix of irritation and admiration. His calm demeanor, intelligence, and moral clarity made her uneasy in ways she had never experienced before. Later, she approached him quietly in a side corridor. Her voice was low, tinged with frustration and curiosity. You solve problems without raising your voice. You never boast. You never falter. Why do humans act this way? Why do you not fear or respond as others would? The human looked at her evenly. Because action matters more than words. Fear and pride are temporary. The results of what we do last far longer than any insult or argument. Alira's violet eyes widened slightly. No one had spoken to her like this before. It was not arrogance, yet it carried authority. Not threat, yet it commanded respect. Unusual, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Composed, clever, and brave, all without effort. And still I do not understand you. The human inclined his head. Understanding comes with observation, patience, experience. You may discover more if you watch carefully rather than test reflexively. For the first time, Alira felt a flicker of humility. She had thought humans were fragile, impulsive, or limited. Yet here was one who displayed competence, focus, and courage beyond most of the races she knew. That evening, the human returned to his quarters. His mind, as always, was active. He reviewed notes, recalculated schedules, and considered contingencies for the next day. He had no idea the princess was thinking about him constantly, or that the whispers of his actions had begun spreading throughout the station. Outside, Princess Alira wandered through the palace gardens. The alien plants glowed softly under artificial lights, casting long shadows on the polished pathways. She walked slowly, reflecting on the day's events. He is different, she said softly. I cannot dismiss him, and yet I do not fully understand him. Her advisors waited at a distance. They dared not speak unless summoned. One whispered, Your Highness, perhaps humans are more capable than we believed. Alira did not answer immediately. She was lost in thought. She realized that her test had failed in an unexpected way. Instead of proving her superiority, the human had demonstrated qualities she had not anticipated. Calmness, intelligence, moral clarity, and competence. Back in his room, the human glanced out the window at the sprawling station. Lights shimmered like stars, and he could see the faint trails of ships leaving and arriving. Each movement, each pattern, each moment was a puzzle he could interpret. He had come here to complete a mission, but already he had begun to observe more than just the station. He had begun to observe the culture, the politics, and the people, including the princess. He did not know what lay ahead, but he was ready. Humans had a way of adapting, of rising to challenges, and of leaving a lasting impression without needing to shout, boast, or fight for recognition. And as he sat quietly, planning the next day's steps, he did not notice the way Princess Alira watched from afar. Curiosity now mingled with respect. The first day of their encounters had ended. No words had been shouted, no dramatic gestures had been made. Yet a silent challenge had been issued, not from the human to the princess, but from his actions, his competence, and his quiet courage. The princess had expected an ordinary human, small and fragile, one who could be dismissed with an insult. Instead, she had met someone who carried respect and authority without demanding it, someone who left a mark simply by being himself. And so, the stage was set. The human would continue his mission, demonstrating the ingenuity, courage, and calm that defined humanity. And the princess would continue to observe, her curiosity now a constant presence, unsure of what she would find next, yet certain that humans were far more remarkable than she had ever imagined. The hum of the station was different that morning. Alarms echoed faintly through the corridors, and distant lights flickered in the marketplace. Traders and visitors alike hurried in confusion, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony. A small part of the station had suffered a structural malfunction, a malfunction that could quickly escalate if not handled with care. Princess Alira stood in the command chamber of the palace, her hands gripping the smooth railing as she observed the emergency feeds. A section of the upper docking bay had begun to crack, and several hover lifts were stuck mid-air, their containers swaying dangerously. She called her advisors forward, her voice sharper than usual. "This situation is critical," she said. "If the structure fails completely, many lives will be lost. I need a solution, fast." The advisors exchanged anxious glances. Many were hesitant, unsure how to respond to a problem that involved both engineering and diplomacy. Some suggested evacuations, others proposed temporary reinforcement, but none seemed confident. "Your Highness," one finally said, "there is one option. The human we observed, he has skills that may help. If you allow him, he could assess the situation quickly and perhaps stabilize the structure." Alira's violet eyes narrowed. She had tested him before, and he had proven his intelligence and calm under pressure. Yet she hesitated. Pride made her reluctant to rely on an outsider, especially a human. Still, the risk was too great. She nodded slowly. "Very well," she said. "Send for him." Meanwhile, the human had been inspecting parts of the lower trading district. His sharp eyes noticed minor problems in the hover platforms and storage systems. Each correction he made was small but precise, keeping the daily flow of the station running smoothly. When his comlink beeped, he saw the princess's message appear. He paused, studying the data feed. The situation was serious. Structural damage, floating containers, potential casualties. Without hesitation, he activated his personal transport and moved toward the affected area. By the time he arrived, the station was buzzing with nervous energy. Alien workers shouted warnings as containers swayed perilously, and some sections of the docking bay had begun to buckle. The princess met him at the entrance, her expression a mixture of irritation and curiosity. "You are late," she said, though her tone carried no true blame. "Time is short." The human glanced at her calmly. "I move as quickly as I safely can," he replied. His voice was steady, precise, and unflinching. Alira's eyes followed him as he scanned the area. He crouched, inspecting structural joints and the integrity of the hoverlift cables. He calculated angles and loads with meticulous care, his fingers moving swiftly over the control interface. "Impressive," one advisor whispered to another. "He is already analyzing the situation in ways we could not imagine." The human worked silently but efficiently. First, he stabilized a container that threatened to fall onto the crowd below. Then he rerouted power to critical structural supports. Each action was deliberate and effective. Aliens nearby watched in awe. They had assumed humans were small and fragile, but this human was clearly capable of precise engineering under extreme stress. Princess Alira observed him closely. She noticed how he avoided unnecessary movements, how he calculated every step before acting, and how his calm demeanor inspired confidence rather than fear. Despite her pride, she could not deny his competence. "Do you need assistance?" she asked finally, unable to keep herself from speaking. The human looked at her briefly. "If you can provide access to the structural interface points, I can stabilize the upper bays more effectively. Direct interference, however, may complicate the system." Alira nodded and gestured to her guards. They quickly opened access points and cleared the area for him. Though hesitant, she followed him closely, observing his process. Minutes turned into an hour as he moved through the damaged sections. Each adjustment, each calibration was made with precision. Containers stopped swaying. Hover lifts returned to their paths, and the structural cracks were held in place temporarily. What had been a potential disaster was gradually being controlled. Alira could not help but admire his skill. "You would think differently," she said. "Your approach is not like ours. You do not panic, you do not overcomplicate, and yet everything works." The human glanced at her briefly. Efficiency is important. Complexity can slow solutions. When time is short, simple and precise actions often succeed better than complex plans. Her violet eyes softened, though she did not admit it aloud. She realized that his calm thinking and decisive action had saved countless lives. He had earned respect not through words, but through his deeds. The worst of the crisis came when one of the upper bays began to shift unexpectedly. A container full of volatile materials teetered on the edge, threatening a chain reaction. Alira froze for a moment, unsure how to intervene. The human's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. Without hesitation, he moved to stabilize the container, using a combination of mechanical clamps and manual adjustments. Sparks flew as the system strained, but his hands were steady. He guided the container safely back into position, preventing disaster. The crowd of onlookers gasped, their fear replaced by astonishment. The princess stood silent, her pride mixed with awe. She had intended to test him, yet here he was, not only solving the crisis but doing so with courage and precision she could not match. When the immediate danger passed, the human stood back, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked toward the princess, who remained silent. At last she spoke. "You have done more than I expected," she said. Her tone was quiet, almost reluctant, but it carried acknowledgement. "It seems humans are not as weak as many assume." The human nodded. "Strength comes in many forms. Courage, precision, observation. These can be as powerful as physical might." Alira studied him closely. She had underestimated him as she had underestimated humans. Yet his calm bravery, his intelligence, and his ability to act under pressure had forced her to reconsider her assumptions. She was both irritated and intrigued. Over the following hours, the princess and the human worked together to ensure the station's safety. Though they were not yet allies, a tentative partnership had formed. Alira issued commands that aligned with his plan, allowing him to implement solutions efficiently. Though she struggled with her pride, she realized that his skill was unmatched, and his calm focus had saved many lives. During brief pauses, the princess observed him quietly. He did not boast, he did not seek praise. He simply focused on the task at hand. Every step he took, every calculation he made reflected discipline, intelligence, and courage. Alira could not help but wonder what other skills humans might possess. Her curiosity grew. She had insulted him initially to test his pride, expecting anger or fear, yet he had responded with quiet action. And now, she found herself considering the possibility that humans, in general, were capable of far more than she had imagined. By the time the crisis had fully passed, the station's structural integrity was restored, and the damaged areas were secure. Workers and traders emerged from hiding, murmuring their thanks and admiration. Some whispered about the human's actions, spreading stories of his calm and clever solutions. Alira remained silent, yet inside, her thoughts were tumultuous. She had encountered someone who defied her expectations, someone who had acted without arrogance, solved problems with precision, and commanded respect without demanding it. As night fell over the station, the human returned to his quarters once more. He was tired but not weary. Each challenge he faced had been an opportunity to observe, to solve, and to demonstrate the qualities that humans were known for: ingenuity, courage, and calm determination. Princess Alira walked alone in the palace gardens, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants casting shadows along the paths. She stopped near a fountain, her reflection shimmering in the water. For the first time, she admitted silently that the human had impressed her. She had tested him, sought to belittle him, and yet he had proven far more capable than she could have anticipated. Her advisors, standing discreetly at a distance, dared not speak. They understood that the princess's pride was being challenged in a way that few had ever accomplished. One whispered quietly, "Your Highness, perhaps humans deserve more attention than we thought." Alira did not respond. She was lost in thought, considering the events of the day. Her mind was both curious and cautious. She had witnessed a human act with bravery, intelligence, and calm focus, qualities that even seasoned diplomats and engineers among her own people sometimes lacked. And so, the first true alliance between the human and the princess began. It was tentative, unspoken, and driven by necessity. Yet through it, the princess began to see the potential in human, their ingenuity, their courage, and their unique way of commanding respect without words. By the time the station lights dimmed for the night, a silent understanding had formed between them. Princess Alira had begun to question her assumptions, and the human, unaware of the full impact of his actions, had once again demonstrated the quiet strength that defined humanity. The stage was set for further challenges. The princess's curiosity would continue to grow, and the human's ingenuity would continue to shine. Together, they would face situations neither could handle alone, forming a bond forged through action, courage, and respect, even if neither admitted it yet. The station had barely recovered from the previous day's structural crisis when new alarms sounded, more urgent and insistent than before. This time, the danger was not mechanical failure but an intruder, a rogue group of alien mercenaries who had breached the outer defense perimeter. Their ships hovered menacingly above the station, weapons ready, their intentions clearly hostile. Princess Alira stood in the command chamber, her hands clenched on the railing. The human had been present for initial reports, silently listening and observing as the council scrambled to respond. His calm demeanor, unchanged by the mounting tension, stood out even more starkly in the chaos. "They are armed and aggressive," an advisor said, voice trembling. "They could destroy sections of the station before we can respond." Alira's violet eyes scanned the holographic display of approaching ships. She knew that conventional defensive measures might not be enough. If they failed, hundreds of lives could be lost. She turned toward the human. "You have been observing for days," she said, her voice steady despite the alarm. "What do you propose?" The human stepped forward, his eyes calm, his mind already calculating possible strategies. "First," he said, "we need to stabilize the civilian areas. Evacuation routes must be clear. Then we need to assess their attack patterns. They will follow predictable paths. If we use precision countermeasures rather than full force, we can minimize damage and neutralize the threat efficiently." Alira nodded. His plan was precise, direct, and devoid of any unnecessary drama. She could see that his experience in observing patterns and solving complex problems under pressure was unmatched. Despite her pride, she knew she had to trust him. The human moved quickly. He coordinated with station engineers, opening evacuation corridors and activating automated defense systems. Aliens who had been panicked began to follow his instructions. His calm voice, precise directions, and focused actions brought a sense of order to the chaos. Princess Alira followed him, her steps careful but deliberate. She could see that every decision he made was thoughtful, efficient, and courageous. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only calculated action. The first wave of mercenaries attacked. Their ships swooped down, firing energy pulses that sent alarms echoing through the station. The human analyzed their trajectories, signaling defense turrets to intercept with precision fire. Containers, platforms, and personnel were protected by his careful calculations. Alira watched, her pride slowly shifting into awe. This human, small and unassuming in appearance, had orchestrated a defense that even her most experienced commanders could not match. His courage was quiet, his intelligence formidable. He did not shout, demand attention, or seek recognition. He simply acted, and lives were saved because of it. A critical moment came when a mercenary ship broke through the initial defense line, heading directly for the central docking bay. Evacuation of the area was underway, but time was short. The human sprinted toward a control console that could redirect energy barriers, his fingers flying over controls. Sparks and alarms flashed, yet he remained composed, calculating angles and timing with precision. Princess Alira could only watch as he adjusted the barriers, creating a safe corridor for the evacuees. The ship collided with the redirected energy field, disabled without destruction, and its crew was captured safely by automated drones. The chamber erupted in quiet applause, but Alira remained silent, her mind racing. "You," she said finally, unable to keep the words back. "You acted with bravery and precision. You saved lives that would have been lost if we had acted differently. Why do you not fear?" The human looked at her calmly. "Fear does not help solve problems. Focus and action do. Panic slows judgment and endangers others. I act to protect life and stabilize situations. That is my responsibility." Alira's violet eyes widened. She realized that his courage was not reckless. It was deliberate, controlled, and guided by intelligence and morality. He did not seek glory. He sought results. She felt a flicker of respect she had never expected to feel for a human. The battle continued for hours. The human coordinated defensive drones, rerouted power to critical systems, and even assisted in repairing minor structural damage caused by the mercenaries' attacks. Each decision he made reflected careful thought, technical skill, and moral clarity. Alira moved beside him whenever she could, silently observing. She noticed the way he prioritized safety, how he calculated risks, and how he kept a calm mind even when alarms screamed around him. By the end of the confrontation, the mercenaries were either captured or driven away, their plans foiled by the precise and courageous actions of one human. When the dust settled, the station's inhabitants began to understand what had happened. Whispers of admiration spread quickly. The human had not only survived a crisis but had actively protected the station, coordinated defenses, and saved countless lives. Aliens who had once doubted humanity now looked on with newfound respect. Princess Alira stood silently beside him. She had intended to insult and belittle him weeks ago, expecting arrogance or failure. Instead, he had demonstrated a courage, intelligence, and moral clarity that few in the galaxy possessed. She realized that humans were not simply resilient. They were capable of inspiring respect through calm, decisive action. For the first time, she spoke words that were not edged with sarcasm or pride. "I misjudged you," she said quietly. "You are remarkable. You have earned my respect not through words or arrogance, but through deeds." The human turned slightly toward her. He did not smile, nor did he seek her approval. He simply nodded. "Respect is earned through action, not expectation," he said. "You witnessed what can be done when focus and courage guide decisions." Alira's violet eyes softened. She did not respond immediately. She was not used to acknowledging someone else's superiority, yet she could not deny the truth. The human's actions had spoken louder than any insult, command, or title ever could. The princess's advisors watched from a distance, noting the unusual moment. They whispered among themselves, understanding that a barrier had been broken, not just between the human and the princess, but between their assumptions and reality. Humanity had proven itself once again. As the station returned to calm, the human began assisting with aftercare, checking structural integrity, ensuring evacuees were safe, and coordinating with station engineers for repairs. Alira observed quietly, now more curious than ever about his methods, his thinking, and his remarkable ability to remain composed under pressure. For the first time, she walked beside him not as a challenger but as an observer, genuinely interested in understanding his mind. She realized that human ingenuity was not just about tools or technology. It was about courage, observation, and moral clarity. These were qualities that could not be measured by size, appearance, or species. By nightfall, the station was secure. Repairs had begun, evacuees returned to safety, and the mercenaries' threat had been neutralized. The human finally stepped back, letting others take over. He was tired yet calm. His work was not complete, but he had accomplished what many thought impossible. Alira watched him carefully, her thoughts complex. Pride, curiosity, and admiration battled within her. She had expected to find weakness, to expose flaws, yet she had found strength, intelligence, and courage far beyond her imagination. "You have changed my view," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "Humans are not what I expected. You have shown bravery, intelligence, and morality in ways that few in the galaxy possess. You have earned not just respect, but understanding." The human looked at her evenly. "Understanding comes from observation, patience, and action. You observed. You learned. That is all that is necessary." Alira nodded slowly, the weight of her own pride giving way to something new. Recognition. She did not say it aloud, but she knew that this human had not only saved lives, but had also challenged her assumptions, changed her perspective, and left an impression that would last far longer than any insult or argument. As the stars glimmered outside the station windows, Alira realized that the events of the day had forged something unexpected: respect between two beings from very different worlds. The human had acted with courage and precision, the very qualities that defined humanity and inspired admiration across the galaxy. And in that quiet moment, she understood that humans could achieve greatness not through arrogance, not through aggression, but through calm, intelligent, and courageous action. For the first time, Princess Alira allowed herself to wonder what other extraordinary qualities humans might possess. The stage was now set for even greater challenges, where courage, intelligence, and moral clarity would be tested further, and the human, quietly confident and capable, would continue to demonstrate why humanity was a species worthy of respect across the stars. The morning sun cast soft light across Zerell Station, highlighting the glimmering towers and the busy streets below. Life had returned to normal after the mercenary attack, yet a quiet tension lingered in the palace. Princess Alira moved through the corridors with unusual purpose, her violet eyes scanning for the human who had so quietly and decisively changed the course of recent events. He had spent the night reviewing reports, planning upgrades to the station's emergency systems, and coordinating with engineers to prevent future crises. Though his actions had been extraordinary, he did not seek recognition or reward. To him, the safety of the station and its inhabitants was simply part of his responsibility. Alira finally found him in the central engineering hub, bent over a console, fingers moving deftly across controls. Sparks of holographic light reflected in his eyes as he worked, analyzing structural weaknesses and energy flows. She approached quietly, letting her presence be noticed only when she spoke. "You are diligent," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Even after all you have done, you continue to work." The human straightened slightly, glancing at her calmly. "Preparation prevents mistakes," he replied simply. "Problems will come. Being ready ensures fewer consequences." Alira studied him carefully. There was no arrogance, no need for praise, no impatience. He was steady, competent, and fully focused. His presence radiated a quiet authority that commanded respect without demanding it. She could not help but feel admiration and perhaps something more bubbling beneath her pride. "You have changed my perspective," she admitted finally. "Humans are stronger, braver, and wiser than I could have imagined. I misjudged you, and through your actions I have learned something new about your kind." The human inclined his head slightly. "Respect and understanding are earned, not assumed. You have observed carefully and learned. That is all that is necessary." Alira's lips pressed into a thin line, a mixture of pride and acknowledgement. "It seems I have underestimated humans, and overestimated myself." A brief silence followed, neither speaking, both aware of the unspoken truth. Human courage, intelligence, and calm had earned recognition not just from her, but from the entire station. The crowd of citizens, the council, and even her advisors now regarded humanity with a new level of respect. The princess turned her attention to the latest station report. Systems that had been compromised during the mercenary attack were now being repaired, reinforced, and upgraded. She realized that this human had done more than save lives in moments of danger. He had improved the station's resilience, leaving a lasting legacy. "Your actions have left a mark here," she said quietly. "Not only did you save the station, but you have inspired confidence in humans among my people. Few could have done what you have." The human looked at her evenly, his calm expression unchanged. "I did what was necessary. That is all any of us can do when faced with challenges." Alira's violet eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed herself a genuine smile. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense meaning. She had seen the truth. Humans could rise to challenges with intelligence, courage, and calm, earning respect even from the most skeptical of observers. In the following days, Alira made a public announcement to the station's council and citizens. She spoke with clarity and authority, acknowledging the human's contributions. "This human," she said, "has demonstrated bravery, intelligence, and calm leadership in ways few could have anticipated. He acted not for recognition, not for reward, but for the safety and stability of Zerell Station. Humanity has earned respect, and I am grateful for his actions." The council and citizens responded with admiration. They had witnessed his skill and courage firsthand, and Alira's words reinforced their impression. For the first time, many began to consider humans as equals in competence, bravery, and ingenuity. The human accepted the acknowledgement quietly. He did not seek applause or honor, simply nodding with calm dignity. His actions had spoken louder than words, and now those words had confirmed the impression his deeds had already made. Alira approached him privately after the announcement. "You have earned more than respect," she said softly. "You have earned my trust. I hope you will consider returning in the future. Humanity's presence here is valuable, and I would be honored to work with you again." The human nodded, appreciating the offer without letting it change his composed demeanor. "I will consider it," he said. "For now my mission requires me elsewhere, but I have observed, learned, and acted. That is my purpose." She paused, studying him carefully. Her curiosity had grown into genuine admiration. "Few beings command respect so quietly," she admitted. "You do not shout, you do not boast, and yet you leave an impression that will not fade." The human glanced at her briefly. "Action and responsibility speak louder than words," he said. "You have seen this today." A quiet moment passed between them, one filled with mutual understanding. She had challenged him, underestimated him, and insulted him initially. Yet he had responded not with anger or pride, but with calm intelligence and courage. The lesson was clear. Humans were capable of far more than appearances suggested. Finally, It was time for him to depart. His transport hovered outside the palace gates, waiting to take him to his next destination. Alira stood beside him, observing as he prepared to leave. "Do you think you have changed anything here?" she asked quietly. The human paused, looking at the station one last time. "Change is not measured by recognition alone," he said. "It is measured by what lasts after the moment passes. Systems are safer. People are safer. Lessons have been learned. That is change." Alira nodded slowly. She realized that his actions had done more than she had imagined. He had saved lives, restored order, and elevated humanity's reputation. And in doing so, he had quietly altered her perception, teaching her that courage, intelligence, and calmness were the true marks of strength. The princess extended her hand, a gesture rare and meaningful among her people. The human accepted it firmly but respectfully. For a brief moment, words were unnecessary. The handshake symbolized mutual respect, understanding, and acknowledgement. "Farewell," she said softly, "and thank you for everything." The human nodded. "Farewell," he replied. "Remember that action defines us more than words. Keep observing, learning, and acting wisely." He stepped into his transport, and the engines hummed as it rose into the sky. Alira watched until the craft became a small speck among the stars. She could not help but feel a strange sense of admiration, curiosity, and perhaps a little pride in having encountered such an extraordinary human. As the day ended, the station returned to normal life. Citizens continued their routines, but the stories of the human's deeds spread like fire. Traders, diplomats, engineers, and citizens spoke of his calm courage, intelligence, and skill. Humanity had earned a reputation not through aggression or intimidation, but through precise action, clear thinking, and moral clarity. Princess Alira walked through the gardens once more, reflecting on everything that had occurred. She realized that humans were capable of far more than appearances suggested. They could inspire respect, achieve great deeds, and change perspectives quietly but profoundly. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that the future might include more collaboration with humans, more learning from their unique approach to challenges, and perhaps more recognition of their remarkable capabilities. The human had arrived quietly, acted decisively, and departed without fanfare. Yet his impact would be felt for years to come, not only in the structural improvements he had made, not only in the lives he had saved, but in the respect and admiration he had earned from one of the most powerful figures in the Zerell dominion. Princess Alira knew this truth clearly. Humans were more than they seemed. They were capable, intelligent, courageous, and steady in ways few others could match, and she would not forget the lesson he had taught her. Through calm action, intelligence, and moral clarity, even the smallest and seemingly fragile beings could leave a lasting mark on the galaxy. As night fell over Zerell Station, she gazed at the stars. Somewhere out there, the human traveled onward, continuing his mission across the galaxy. She felt a quiet sense of gratitude and anticipation, knowing that humans were not only survivors but pioneers, problem solvers, and remarkable beings who could earn respect without ever raising their voice. And so, the human left the station behind, but his legacy remained, not in titles, awards, or words of praise, but in lives saved, systems improved, perspectives changed, and respect earned across species and worlds. Princess Alira had witnessed it firsthand, and she would carry the memory of his deeds and the lesson of humanity long into the future. The galaxy had seen one human act with brilliance, courage, and calm, and it would never forget.